Brother proposed to my fiancée, in front of family to prove that she's only with me to make him jealous and will dump me for him. A year ago, my fiancée, Jen, 26F, and my brother, Mark, 26M, were dating. They dated back to August 2022, for background. He ended their relationship after just 1 month together, saying he was tired of relationships and never truly wanted to settle down. I was living in a different state when they started dating, so I was unaware that he even had a girlfriend. And I didn't even know Jen existed until I met her. When I moved back in October, Jen and I met at a bar and instantly clicked. We had a couple more meetings before we formally started dating, and she was without a doubt the most stunning and smartest lady I had ever met. In December, I eventually bring her up to my family and suggest that they get together for Christmas. They were aware that I was dating, but since I'm not the best at disclosing personal information, I withheld most information about her until I was certain of our true level of commitment. My parents began spreading my phone around the dinner table after they asked to see some images. When Mark realized it, he lost it, calling me a lousy brother and insisting that I stop seeing his ex. I declined. Jen provided me the specifics of their split and acknowledged that they had dated when I questioned her about it. I assumed Mark was over it when after a few weeks he stopped bringing up the subject of me dating his ex. This year, on Jen's birthday, I proposed to her and we went to a lavish dinner with our family and her closest friends. Once again, Mark lost it and became enraged about my asking her to marry me. My sisters and I quickly disregarded him. This past weekend was the incident. For the past 2 months, Mark had kept a low profile regarding the entire matter. He invited Jen and me to a family dinner at his apartment with my parents and sisters after I didn't see him much, and assumed he had lost contact with me, which I didn't mind. We decided to go even though I thought it was strange because my sisters and parents were also going. We had a simple dinner before moving into the living area to continue our conversation. After we had been talking for around 30 minutes as usual, Mark got up to announce something. After giving a protracted speech in which he expressed his gratitude to his family for being present for this momentous occasion, he got down on one knee and proposed to Jen. He was wearing a cheap ring. Jen, clearly uncomfortable and perplexed, insisted that he put it away and get up. I went to my dad before he could grasp hold of Mark and hit him. He mentioned something about wanting to show me that Jen wasn't really into me and that she was just trying to get even with him. I won't repeat most of it because I was too upset to listen to most of it. My parents hurried me out before things got worse and assured me that they would speak with him. Even though that was a few days ago, I'm still furious about it. Right now, I'm at a loss on what to do. I'm afraid this will make Jen think twice about getting married to me. Any suggestions? Edit. I would want to elucidate several points that I noticed in the comments. 1. We recently got engaged, Jen and I. We both realized at that moment that this was a long-term relationship. I'm confident about her as quickly as it is. 2. It was me that approached her when we first met, not the other way around. I'm not sure if she suspected or knew that we were related. When I found out they were dating, I asked, and she said she didn't know. Although I didn't have any reason to doubt that, I must accept that Mark's apparently excessive response raises some red flags. 3. When I met her, I was unaware that she was dating Mark. I'm not close to Mark at all. We were together once, but as we became older, we drifted apart and stopped talking. We didn't talk much before I moved back, except on important occasions like his or my birthdays. Before I felt ready to expose my family to Jen, she was somewhat aware of them. I sensed no lingering feelings on either side when she and Mark crossed paths again. She wasn't overly loving toward him, but she also didn't treat him like a stranger. 4. I was informed that this was a 1-month-long relationship. I may have made a mistake in believing that I could ask her to marry me without first getting her consent. I'm not certain. Having said that, I want to discuss everything with Mark this weekend in order to figure out what's going on. It's my fault for not doing my research because I never asked for his side of the story. Update. I gave Mark a call and requested him to come chat to me at my house. I informed him that while I would have preferred for Jen to attend the discussion as well, I would understand if he didn't. He arrived at my house today at noon after agreeing to have a conversation with both of us. A few minutes passed in relative silence before I struck up a discussion. I said I was sorry for hurting him and for not telling him that Jen was getting engaged. Despite saying it was whatever, he acknowledged the apology. When I asked Jen about the relationship and breakup, I informed him what she had stated, and I asked him to make sure it was real. I basically mentioned that I wanted to make sure I wasn't misinterpreting their connection or downplaying how serious they were, and that his reaction throughout the entire process has been extraordinary. He acknowledged that their relationship lasted for just a few weeks and that he ended it because he was no longer interested. Jen questioned whether his actions were a result of residual emotions or remorse over their breakup. He acknowledged that she looked better than when he had last seen her, but he didn't feel any misgivings about it. He claimed that I shouldn't have violated him as a man by going after his ex, because he simply didn't like seeing a female he dated, even for a brief period of time with his older brother. It wasn't like I deliberately did this knowing their past together, I told him. I had no idea they dated. He He dismissed me with a shrug, telling me that I still ought to have broken it off. He insisted that he would have acted in the same way if the roles had been reversed, which I find unlikely. I questioned him about why, if he had no residual feelings, he proposed to her. In summary, he was discussing it with a friend who was present during Mark and Jen's relationship, and the friend suggested that Jen might have known from the beginning that we were related and was retaliating against him because Jen had been unfaithful to him after their breakup. He came up with the plan to ask her out and see if she would drop me for him, since he and his friend thought it would be a good idea to test it and see if they were right. When Jen pressed him for more details about why he believed she was still infatuated with him, he explained that it was reasonable to assume that she was curious about him after their separation and that they were still hanging out at their old haunts. Then, it confirmed his suspicions when she appeared at random with his brother. Before they started dating, Jen had been hanging out at those locations with friends, so she wouldn't avoid them because of a breakup, she told him. She had only once inquired about him after their breakup. She also expressed to him how outraged she was by the notion that she would follow me in order to get revenge on him. He gave her a half-hearted apology and shrugged, telling her that she had to consider things from his perspective. He questioned if she was sure she didn't know, and she replied that it hadn't occurred to her to notice the similarity until we were in the same room because we don't behave the same way. He agreed. That concluded the conversation pretty much. Prior to his departure, he informed me that I might revoke his invitation to the wedding since he finds it difficult to maintain our connection in light of his past involvement with her. I assured him that he didn't need to worry about it because he would probably not be invited anyhow. After our conversation a few hours ago, I do feel better. Although my parents aren't very fond of him being left out, they recognize that it was a mutually decided upon and probably for the best. My sisters informed me that they didn't hold it against me for not wanting him at the wedding because they recognized he had no valid excuse for being a jerk. I'm going to cut off communication with Mark as of right now, and I doubt he will get in touch with me anytime soon. Update 2. I haven't spoken to Mark much since our previous exchange. We have only communicated in familial contexts. Neither of us has called the other. My mother is currently angry because Mark hasn't received an invitation to my wedding. It all began with a remark made on the occasion of my younger sister Sophie's 22th birthday. At the conclusion of the night, her boyfriend of, I believe, 4 years proposed to her, and we sat around discussing her ideal wedding. She briefly had discussed her desire for a destination wedding as well as her plans for the cake and clothing before joking, "Teddy, even if Mark is not allowed to attend your wedding, you won't mind if he attends mine, is I right?" I told her, laughing it off, that even if I wanted to, I couldn't be upset about her guest list. My mother questioned if Mark was still not invited to my wedding, giving me this strange expression. When I said yes, she became agitated. She stated she believed I was kidding and that it was unfair for me to actually forbid him from attending the wedding because he is related to the bride and groom. She claimed that I was being petty by harboring a grudge. I told her that I had agreed with him not to come. I then informed her that since the day was about Sophie, it wasn't appropriate to discuss my wedding at this time. Mark and she could phone me at a later time if they wanted to discuss it. After Sophie somewhat chastised my mother for attempting to make her special day all about Mark, my mother gave up on the matter. For those of you who were curious, Mark was reportedly unable to attend Sophie's celebration due to work obligations. My mother came to my house a few days later and said she wanted to talk about my wedding. She questioned me about why I was so certain that Mark wouldn't attend my wedding. She advised me not to be so self-conscious about Mark and Jen's past connection and that it was inappropriate to invite him again. I informed her that Mark and I had decided that he would not attend the wedding and that he could speak with me directly if he had any concerns about it. After we argued, she threatened to cancel her visit if I didn't extend an invitation to Mark, claiming that I was shunned her son. I shrugged and advised her to throw her invite in the garbage if that's what she wanted to happen because I wouldn't force her to come. When she inquired as to whether I would really be all right with her missing the event, I assured her that it wouldn't be the first time she had missed one of mine due to Mark. She walked away after accusing me of being an AH for making her own mistakes in the past. After that, she and a few family members started calling and texting me about the whole thing, telling me I was in the wrong and that I should invite Mark to maintain the peace. My mother has also been sending Jen messages requesting that she chat to me and persuade me to alter my mind, but as far as I know, she hasn't been answering. To date, my dad and his side of the family, which consists of just my aunt and uncle and their 2 children, agree with me and continue to attend, while the majority of my mom's side of the family has shown support for her by refusing to come. My sisters and, of course, Jen's family will also be attending the wedding. I also discussed it with Mark and asked him if he felt that not receiving an invitation bothered him. He claimed that since he didn't send out the invitation in the first place, he doesn't understand why it's such a big deal and that he still doesn't want to go. He instructed me not to engage him in the conflict because he isn't involved, and he claims he would say the same to her. I'm currently back to having little contact with my mother, but I still get along well with my dad. In the unlikely event that my mom and her family decide to reverse their boycott, I'm still debating whether to extend my invitation to them again. My dad is aware of this too. Since the guest list is much smaller, Jen and I have begun investigating the possibility of reducing the venue for the time being. Update 3. My mother has been permanently excluded from the wedding. She said she wanted to clear the air and talk about everything when she went by around 2 weeks after deciding not to attend the wedding. After agreeing, we welcomed her inside for dinner. When Jen brought her a plate of food, I asked her if she still intended to skip the wedding. She expressed her want to, but she added she would never forgive me for not inviting Mark due to a small oversight. She replied it was simply a joke when I pointed out that his easy error was proposing to my fiancé while I was seated less than 3 feet away. If she was sticking to her guns about Mark attending the wedding, Jen questioned why she felt the need to speak. She expressed her wish to speak with Jen and her hope that Jen would listen to her and persuade me to extend an invitation to Mark once more. She seemed to have assumed that I was at work and that she could capture her by herself. Since this is about my brother, Jen gently informed her that while she appreciated her point of view, she wouldn't have had the chat without me. After my mother said something along the lines of, "I can't even have a conversation with Jen without me thinking for her," there was a rather intense exchange between the three of us until Jen urged her to leave. My mother continued to yell at her as she stood up and moved in the direction of the door. She's screaming by now about how she's destroying our family. My mother grabbed Jen's hair as she was unlocking the front door and pushed her to the ground while she was still crying. I took her away from her and tossed her outside after she struck her and attempted to rip her face. She kept hammering on the door for a few minutes while I checked on Jen, then she left and kept calling both of us. We'll never speak to Jen again, so don't bother reaching out. I contacted my mom once I was positive she was all right. I also told my sisters and father over the phone about what had happened. My father was taken aback and attempted to justify himself by stating that she had been under stress over the whole thing for some time. My sisters claim that because Jen has always been a crazy bi, they knew she would snap at some point. They promised to check on Jen. When I asked Jen whether she wanted to file a police report, she stated that she just wanted to permanently break off communication. She was physically assaulted, so I told her that part was apparent, but she should still speak with the police since she doesn't want my mom to be arrested. Thankfully, Jen's mother and my sisters visited to console her, so she is doing okay. Everything is banned from my mom until Jen says differently. I just don't know what to do at this point. Although my sisters and I want to persuade Jen to go to the police, she refuses because she thinks she'll feel bad about getting detained for this. I would also like proof in case something goes wrong in the future. Update 4. The most common question I get asked is why I decided to get back in touch after everything. And the short answer is that I would sacrifice anything for my sisters, for the birth of her first child, and to support her during her adjustment period. Charlotte wanted the whole family present. She refused to have part-time aunts and uncles who saw her child only on special occasions like holidays and birthdays. She never asked for much when she was a child, so when she asked if I would be willing to try for her, I said yes, as I knew it would please her. Additionally, I believe that a part of me wished they had changed. I also don't regret attempting to make amends. My parents remain awful, but I've won because I've found the love of my life. Here's the update after some folks asked if there was one. Apologies for any confusion or mess, but a lot has transpired. After filing a report, we were informed by the police that although Jen is not interested in pursuing the matter further, we would be respected if we chose to move further. We presented some really good evidence of the assault, such as photos of Jen's face and texts between my parents detailing the incident. In case anything more occurs, we were told to document and report any more events involving my mom. I doubt it will go anywhere, given where we live, but at least it is documented. I received roughly 100 irate texts informing me that they had at least talked to her about the incident. When I sought to leave my work, my mother tried to corner me and yelled at me for trying to ruin her life. She would not stop yelling that I was a terrible son for attempting to have her arrested over a minor disagreement and that she had done nothing wrong to warrant such a harsh punishment. I advised her not to hit Jen if she didn't want to face legal repercussions. I denied her demand that I inform the police to disregard the complaint. I gave her the full account of the officer's statement that it was beyond my control. She threw a fit in the parking lot and struck me a couple of times, but only on the arm and chest before security came and pulled her off the property. I had to discuss the event with my supervisor. Fortunately, once I explained what was going on, she was understanding of everything. I explained everything to Jen when I got home. She was furious and requested that we talk to my family about the strategy going ahead. After a lengthy conversation, we decided to cut off all communication with my family aside from my sisters, after reading some Redditors' suggestions. We both agree that having them in my life, especially since we're not even married, adds needless stress to our relationship. She informed me that she was thinking of relocating and creating a buffer between our family and mine. She stated that she made an effort to avoid becoming involved in my family's problems because it is not her place, but she will not stand for my mom's actions or my dad's support of my mom's abuse. I agreed with her that they were more bother than they were worth, and I also don't want to put up with this any longer. There was a lot more spoken, too much to mention in one paragraph. She is assisting me in finding a therapist, and I also consented to attend treatment. After our conversation, I made the decision to phone my dad and inform him that I would no longer be in contact. I called him the first time and left a message requesting a lengthy conversation because he didn't pick up. Upon his return contact, he inquired for my mom's permission to participate in the talk. I assured him that it was all right because she also needed to hear my side of the story. The exchange proceeded pretty much as one could anticipate. I informed both of them that Jen and I will be removing them from our lives. After all the effort to mend our relationship, my dad insisted on knowing why I would do something like that. I informed him that everything that had happened with Mark had demonstrated to me that there is truly no healing between us, and that in their eyes, the only people in the world are my mother and my younger brother. I informed them that I didn't want to hang on to a failing relationship because our relationship had reached a breaking point due to their persistent partiality of Mark. I informed them that while I had consented to make amends for Charlotte's sake, I didn't appreciate the disrespect that Jen and I had been treated with, and I would no longer put up with it for the benefit of both of us. I expressed my frustration to my mother in particular, telling her that I was sick of being the victim of Mark's attitude and her poor parenting. In addition, I told her that I would never forgive her for the things she had done to Jen as well as to my sisters, me when we were younger. She began to talk about how I should move on like my sisters have, but I interrupted her and informed her that she would never be able to forgive me, especially after everything she had done in the previous few weeks, so she should accept their forgiveness and move on. She broke down in tears and questioned how I could have treated her like such a bad guy. I assured her that since I hadn't done anything wrong, she could only be angry with herself. She started crying even more and told me how much she hated having me in her life and how I've only attempted to make things worse. This sparked a furious confrontation between her and Jen once more, during which Jen called her insults that were far more colorful than disgusting for saying something like that to me. When Jen finished talking to my mom, I'm not sure if she left the room or simply decided to stop talking. My father begged me to try to see things from my mom's perspective and expressed that he wasn't comfortable with me being cut off from life. He stated that I was being unjust to penalize her for her difficulties raising and taking care of us, and that she was also having difficulties as a result of her children's arguments. His final words were, "We were a family, and I shouldn't let the past keep us from moving forward." I told him there was nothing he could say or do to change my opinion because she had only ever cared for herself and Mark. I hung up after telling him that while it was up to him whether or not to maintain my number, I would be blocking him and my mother everywhere and wouldn't be contacting them again. I then uninvited everyone in my family aside from my aunt and uncle and my sisters in a lengthy email that included the link to my blogs. After composing the email, Jen hugged me while I sobbed. She reassured me that everything would be all right. I hadn't wept in a long time. After reading the email, my sisters also contacted me. I expressed my regret to Charlotte for not being able to carry on reconciling as she desired, and she assured me that it was not my fault that I had to break up with them once more. My family has given me a rather mixed reception. Some people are upset that I discussed family matters in a public online forum, while others are upset with my parents for having never known it was this bad. Mark was the final person I spoke with about everything. He inquired as to whether I was cutting him off as well. I said that I wasn't, but that I also wouldn't be making an effort to get in touch with him. We haven't spoken since. He didn't dispute and simply wished me luck on the wedding. Jen and I are currently searching for a new home to stay. The idea is to become more intimate with Jen's brother. Jen and I enjoy the city he lives in, which is about 3 hours away from where we are right now. After discussing the transfer with my supervisor, Jen is considering working entirely remotely or potentially looking for a new position. And once more, our locations were altered. Considering that we have a much lesser guest list, my future brother-in-law might allow us to utilize his lake property for the wedding.